What's up everybody, Matt Moran here for another weekly update. So there's lots of news to get to this week. The first story is one that many of you have been asking me about, my opinions on the 2019 Camaro refresh that was officially revealed here. And my first impression is I don't like it, but oftentimes that's the case with refreshes. I also didn't like the 2018 Mustang refresh whenever that came out, and now look at me, I've ordered one. So, clearly it's, one of those things I think will grow on me. It's not horrendous the more that I look at. When I first saw it on the very first day, I was like, no way, that's awful. And now I actually don't mind the V6 and 4-cylinder one too much. And I think that's, I don't know if it's a better change, but it's not any worse than the current one. But I don't know. The SS, though, has a unique bumper. That's the main thing with the SS. They're changing it up so that it's completely different as far as bumpers on the front there, where you have the larger black portion, whereas it's body colored on the lower models. But I don't know, it doesn't work for me. I mean, clearly it was inspired by the Bumblebee Transformer Camaro in the latest movie. I think like the headlights are fine. It's just there's just way too much going on with the grille and stuff. It just kind of gets lost and almost just ends up looking like a Lexus or something. So I don't know, not a huge fan of it myself. The good news is though, they said that the ZL1 is not getting the new front end. They said the ZL1 styling and aero has been optimized for the best possible cooling for the ZL1. So the ZL1 is not getting the changes, at least not up front. I don't know about the back end, but at least for the front, no changes there. And so I personally prefer the ZL1 version of the Camaro the best anyways, so just more motivation to go for the ZL1 if you're considering one and don't like the new looks. Otherwise, though, I actually do like the new taillights. I think they actually look pretty cool. Definitely a lot more interesting than the kind of boring looking taillights you got on the previous Camaros. So yeah, they didn't give any real details about the other mechanical changes. They just showed the new car and that's it. We do know the SS is going to be getting the 10-speed automatic, the same one that was in the ZL1 and also in the Mustang. They co-developed it with Ford, and so it's going to be kind of crazy. The SS and the Mustang GT will both have very, very similar, basically the same transmissions if you go for the automatic. Other additions that are Mustang-esque with the new Camaro SS is it now gets launch control and line lock. Where have we heard of that before? Also, you can see there's also some ZL1 inspiration with the regular SS. There's a new air extractor in the hood there, which is kind of cool. Also, if you get the 2SS or the ZL1, you now also get the camera rearview mirror that has been seen in Cadillacs. Another change here is they've announced that the 2.0T version of the Camaro now is going to be available with the 1LE package, just like the V6 and V8s are. They didn't announce any pricing for that package or pricing for any of these new Camaros at all. They didn't announce any kind of horsepower changes or engine changes or anything. So I guess that stuff is still potentially on the table, or it's not changed at all. We'll have to wait and see what they come out and announce. But so far we have the new looks here, and let me know your comments on it below, which I'm sure you guys will. Also, there's a few other 2019 Chevys that got refreshes here. The first is the Malibu is getting a refresh here for 2019, and there's a new RS model, but it's just an appearance package, nothing more, sadly. But you can see I think that's part of the problem with the new Camaro is they have a similar grille to like the Malibu and stuff. Like, change it up. You can't have the looks that are similar to a Malibu on your sports car. It's just, I don't know, just for me personally at least. But anyway, also the other change for the Malibu for 2019 here is that everyone that gets the 1.5T motor also now gets a CVT transmission instead of a regular 6-speed automatic, which doesn't sound like great news either, but that's the way everyone's going for better fuel economy. Also, the Cruze got a refresh, and it's pretty light on the Cruze here, but the sad news with the Cruze for 2019 is they're getting rid of the manual transmission in all trims. So you can no longer get a Cruze with a manual. Just another vehicle to lose out to the manual. But I reviewed the manual hatchback last year, and it's not the greatest of all the manual hatches available out there, but it was nice that they offered it, and a little more fun than the automatic at least. So anyway, no manuals for the Cruze anymore. They're also introducing a new cheaper LS trim for the hatch version as well, so that should help bring the price down of the hatch a little bit and maybe help it sell better. Lastly, they've refreshed the Spark for 2019, which is basically just new front and rear bumpers, and there's an optional automatic emergency braking system you can now get for it. So that's it as far as all the 2019 changes from Chevy. They also teased the new 2020 Silverado HD that I think is coming either later this year or early next, but as you can see, it looks very big and intimidating from the one picture we have. Other Chevy truck news, though, is that AutoGuide discovered that Chevy has trademarked the ZR2 Bison name. And so a ZR2 was shown at SEMA this past year that was built by American Expedition Vehicles, and it had a bison in its logo. So I don't know if like Chevy bought them out and the whole logo thing, or what's going on with that, since I thought that was an aftermarket thing. Maybe they just, you know, kind of brought them on to help with this. I'm not sure, but basically you can expect the ZR2 Bison to probably take a lot of elements from that SEMA car and, you know, sell it for a production version. So pretty good idea what that's going to look like. And so anyway, that's all the Chevy news here for this week. Next, though, is Ford had a big reveal this week, and that is the all-new 2019/2020 Focus. And the reason why I say the two different model years is it goes on sale in China and Europe this year as a 2019 model, but North America is not going to be getting it until next year, the second half of next year, as a 2020 model. And so they're all going to be built in China, and so that's how they're sorting out the production, is they're just building them all there. And it looks really good. I have to say, they did an excellent job, especially the front end looks very cool. Clearly has some Volvo influence to it, but the back end and stuff, I think it looks really, really good. And I think so. Automoto, they actually did a rendering of what an RS version would look like, and that really looks sweet. And so, yeah, hopefully it looks close to that render whenever an RS version finally does come. But other things here, you can see there's a 5-door wagon version. Now that is, of course, a Europe and maybe China thing. Most likely we will not get the wagon, since we do not get very many wagons over here. There is this active version, though, which is like a smaller wagon that's lifted up a little bit. Reminds you of a Subaru Crosstrek, you know, Golf all track, something like that. So I think, you know, in the past they've had those versions, I think, for Europe, but they never brought them over. But with how hot that segment is and how many Crosstrek Subarus selling, I think it'd be silly of Ford to not bring over this active version, whatever they end up calling it here. So yeah, you know, that could be shown as well. But so this is just a reveal for Europe and China. So we'll get, you know, obviously the orange side markers here in the States, and probably some other tweaks to the US specific version. So this is just, you know, an idea of what we're going to be getting here. Also, the engines are completely up in the air. We do know that for Europe and China, there's going to be a 1-liter EcoBoost, 2 1.5-liter EcoBoosts with different tunes, and a 2-liter diesel. And we already have available the 1-liter EcoBoost in the Focus, and we also have the 1.5-liter. So it might just be those two engines we get here in the States. Definitely won't get the diesel, I'm sure. Also, for these new Focuses, they're using an 8-speed automatic now, and there's 3 different drive modes, including Sport and Eco, which is a, you know, cool little inclusion. They said they completely redesigned the whole chassis, so it's a completely ground up new car, and it's going to be more refined, and they say more fun to drive. So that's pretty exciting to see. They also, you know, showed off this ST line version, which means there is an intention to do an ST version, although that hasn't been shown yet, but will be coming, of course, later on. I'm guessing maybe like a 2021 model year or something like that. Also, all these new Focuses are going to be getting Ford's Copilot 360 system that they revealed a few weeks ago as well. You know, so that's right in line with all the other stuff offered in the marketplace. But yeah, so that's it as far as all the stuff there on the new Focus, but it sounds promising, and we'll have to wait till we get the US version here in the States. Other Ford news is that the Ranger Raptor was spied running around Michigan, and it's in a right-hand drive version. So this is clearly the 4-in-1 that they just shipped over here and are driving around, all right-hand drive and all. So, you know, I don't know if it's there for testing or what's going on with why they have one here in the States, but it's most likely a Ranger Raptor is a no-brainer. It would sell excellently in the States, where, you know, the largest amount of pickup trucks are sold, and so it's only a matter, to me, in my mind at least, of not if, but when. And so, yeah, anyway, interesting to see that running around. Another vehicle revealed for Europe and China this past week was the all-new Volkswagen Touareg, which, again, is not coming to America. We have the Atlas now instead, which is custom-made just for our American taste of something super large. The Touareg's a little more trim, as you can see there. And the interesting thing about the Touareg is it has the highest tech interior we've ever seen in a Volkswagen. It's got the 12-inch virtual cockpit first off, but then there's a 15-inch infotainment display, which is really, really massive. And I don't know, as they get bigger and bigger, it makes me wonder if they're going to get more and more distracting, because there's just so much screen real estate and so much you have to figure out as far as where to put your finger and stuff. That might be kind of tricky to do while driving, but we'll have to wait and see how that pans out. Anyway, this whole new setup is called the InnoVision Cockpit, according to Volkswagen. Other new things about the Touareg here: it gets four-wheel steering now, electronically adjustable suspension, night vision is included, front cross-traffic assist, LED matrix headlights, and there's even a new feature called Roadwork Lane Assist, which is a semi-autonomous system that includes steering, braking, and accelerating up to 37 miles per hour. So all the, lower speed type stuff. I think it's mostly on the highway, but we'll have to see, how that actually pans out. It's also 234 pounds lighter, even though it's longer and wider than the outgoing Touareg. And as far as, of course, since this is only for Europe and China, there's all kinds of different engines you can get, from a diesel V6 all the way up to a 415 horsepower diesel V8 and a few gas engines as well, and I'm sure there'll be electric and hybrid versions, all that kind of stuff down the road. But anyway, interesting to see that. Other Volkswagen news is that Autoblog spoke with a Volkswagen representative this past week that told them that the GLI version of the new Jetta is coming, which we already knew, but they also confirmed it won't use the torsion beam rear suspension. That was actually one of the things with the new Jetta, is it kind of got a downgrade. It used to have an independent rear suspension, and now the new Jetta has a torsion beam, simpler rear suspension there, but thankfully, they said the GLI version is going to go back to a multi-link independent rear suspension. It will not use the torsion beam of the regular Jetta here. And so they also are saying it's going to get the same 2-liter 4-cylinder turbo motor, most likely the same exact one as the GTI. So 220 horsepower, 258 pound-feet of torque, I think. And it'll still be available with either a 7-speed dual clutch or a 6-speed manual. So I'm really glad they're keeping the manual around for the next-gen GLI here. And so anyway, that sounds pretty promising. And it'll probably be arriving at the LA Auto Show this fall. Could be at a different time, but that seems to make the most sense. Like the Touareg, another Volkswagen Group vehicle that we probably won't get here in the States, though, is the 2019 Audi A6 Avant was revealed this past week. So looks pretty good. It's basically just the same A6 as before, just the wagon version. Now, we might get an all-road version if they do that, where you add an extra inch of ground clearance, the body cladding, and then all of a sudden every American loves it. That might come to the States here. They'd probably make a better business case for something like that. But anyway, as far as this A6 Avant, there aren't any details given, but it's basically the same exact thing as, again, the sedan. So all the same stuff the sedan has, you should be able to get here in the wagon. Audi also did show the E-Tron Vision Gran Turismo that they actually built a working car out of. So, it was originally just a video game thing, and then they actually built the real thing. And it actually performs, too. This isn't just like, has some little tiny engine under the hood just to move it around at car shows. This thing actually drives, and it's going to be used as a race taxi at future Formula E events, apparently. So they say it has 3 electric motors, 2 in the back and 1 in the front. They have 280 horsepower each for a total of 815 horsepower, they're saying. 0 to 62 takes less than 2.5 seconds, and it only weighs 3,200 pounds. And I'm very curious to see, if they're actually making this into a working thing. We know that stuff like this is coming eventually in the future, but it sounds like they might actually be kind of close to having some type of production version of this. Maybe it'll be the successor to the R8 or something, who knows. But anyway, that's pretty cool. That's actually running and driving. Also, there's some more exciting details that have surfaced here about the 2019 Miata this past week. So I previously reported how, there was a leaked document that was suggesting it would get a horsepower bump up to 181 horsepower and 151 pound-feet of torque. And that has been confirmed again thanks to a Mazda dealer in Canada and some members on Miata.net. So yeah, 26 more horsepower, 3 additional pound-feet of torque. The interesting thing about those gains, as Road and Track points out though, is that the only way to get a horsepower bump that big and a torque bump that small is by making the engine have a higher red line and just revving it harder and higher. And so a red line wasn't revealed with all this leaked info that I'm about to show here, but it did say that I was going to have an increased rev capacity. So some type of higher red line. How high, who knows? Other details though about this engine, that got really detailed. It says it's going to have ultralight pistons, lighter connecting rods, and a new crankshaft. It'll also have larger intake and exhaust ports in the engine and a high lift cam. There's going to be a new throttle body and higher flow intake and exhaust as well. The only, and that all sounds really, really great. That's what racers have been doing to their Miatas for years. So this is going to make for a really exciting driving Miata. The only possible downside is they're saying it's going to be switching to a dual mass flywheel to better handle the noise, vibration, harshness of this more powerful and higher revving engine. But heavier flywheel usually means more sluggish shifting, and it makes the engine a little bit slower to rev and things like that. So we'll have to see how that all pans out. But other interesting changes here. It gets a telescoping steering wheel, which tall people will enjoy. And there's also smart city auto braking, so you don't hit pedestrians if you're not paying attention. There's also going to supposedly be a new brown convertible top available. Although again, some of this stuff is content for Canada, so who knows how much of that will transfer over to the States, because there's sometimes a few differences, I guess, in the Miata line between Canada and America. Also, it's sounding like it's going to lose the CD player, much like other vehicles. The 2019 Mustang is also getting rid of the CD player unless you get the fully upgraded sound system. So a lot of car companies getting rid of CD players, and it sounds like it's going to be gone from the Miata here for 2019. And also, at least in Canada, the base model is also going away completely. So there's only going to be 2 trims. Their trims are different than ours here, but just 2 trims, and that's it, and the base one's going away. We'll have to see what they end up doing here for the States. But anyway, very interesting to hear all that on the new Miata. It sounds like it's going to be a pretty sweet little vehicle there. And yeah, pretty interested in that. Other stuff that is less interesting, but also getting a power boost, is the Subaru WRX STI for 2019. So don't get too excited though, because everyone's like, oh, there's finally more power for the WRX STI, but it's only 5 more horsepower for a total of 310, and it's the same 5 horsepower bump that is in the Type RAs of the WRX STI for 2018. So I guess all the engine stuff from the Type RA is trickling down to the regular STI for 2019 here. It probably won't have all the same aero and all that type of stuff, but at least the engine improvements. This was revealed, by the way, from a VIN document that was sent in to the NHTSA. And so yeah, I mean, it's something, but again, this is just like keeping the WRX STI on life support until the full new version comes out that'll hopefully have something actually new and revolutionary on it. Some other mixed good and bad news here from Subaru actually comes from Australia's Drive magazine, who spoke with Subaru North American CEO Tom Dole, and he confirmed, because I wasn't sure whenever we saw the new 2019 Forester in New York if it would have a manual option, and he confirmed there will not be a manual offered in the new Forester. He did say that the manual will continue to be offered in the WRX for the future here, and we also know that the new Crosstrek continues to offer it as well. So those two get it, but basically everything else within Subaru, forget about it. The Forester, you could get it still in the base, but not anymore. Again, that's the way things are going these days, and at least they're keeping it to the sportier models. And so anyway, interesting to hear that. And another week, another Supra development. So this week, there's, again, more spy pictures of the Supra. And you would say, well, what can you see anymore? There's been so many spy photos. But this new batch of spy photos actually shows us 3 pictures of the interior, which confirms this is a closer to production version than the ones we've seen in the past. And it does show the gauge cluster partially. It's really obscured still, but we see part of the gauge cluster for the first time. We see the fuel level, reading, and some type of looks like digital speedometer, tachometer thing. It's really hard to tell, but something there. Otherwise, it's straight BMW parts bin for the switchgear. The steering wheel, the shifter, climate controls, all that type of stuff seems right out of all the BMW stuff. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this car actually feels with a Toyota badge on it. It seems seems like it's got a split identity a little bit, even more so than the BRZ and FRS did. So we'll have to wait and see, but anyway, interesting to see that. Speaking of BMW, though, there was 4 official pictures leaked out this past week of the 2019 M2 Competition. And so this is thanks to BMW Australia that accidentally posted these up a little early and also gave us some interesting info to go along with it. So, I mean, first it looks slightly more aggressive here with, you know, a little bit more of a aggressive front bumper. You get M4 mirrors now on the M2 Competition and also M4 seats. But the big news here is it gets a huge horsepower bump from 365 horsepower to 410 horsepower thanks to a switch from that single turbo setup to the twin turbo setup that's straight out of the M3 and the M4. So that should make it really fun. I drove, you know, the regular M2 last year, and that was a blast already. With an extra, you know, 50 odd horsepower here, that is going to be really, really impressive. So we'll have to see, you know, how that ends up selling, you know, and hopefully it's not super rare or limited. The information online, by the way, only mentioned a dual clutch transmission, but hopefully a manual will still be offered. That's still kind of up in the air until we get the official, you know, stuff for the vehicle. But anyway, interesting to see that. Another car that was partially leaked this past week was the next-gen Lexus ES. And so Lexus showed an official teaser of the grille, but then someone posted online a picture of the front end showing us the headlights as well, which will look very similar to the LS like we expected, you know, very similar styling language with all the Lexuses. It'll be on Toyota's new global architecture, which also is the same platform that, you know, the Camry and the Avalon are on, and in the past those two models have shared a lot with, you know, the ES here, so we'll have to see how much is shared this time around. And so actually I'll be driving the new Avalon this weekend as well, and so maybe that'll give me a little bit of a feel for what the new ES might be like. But anyway, other Lexus hints about the ES here. They say to expect the unexpected, that's the tagline, and that a hybrid drivetrain will be, of course, offered, which isn't a surprise to no one. And anyway, that's going to be revealed in Beijing on April 25th. Another vehicle that's going to be revealed in Beijing is the fully electric Buick Enspire concept with an EN instead of IN. And so it's just one picture there again, and you know, it's probably going to be Bolt based. That's kind of what people are thinking, is this is going to be Buick's version of the Bolt for China that may come over to the States here as well. I think the Enspire name has also been trademarked here for the United States, so we'll have to wait and see, but anyway, interesting to see that. And there's lots of spy photos this past week that were taken, and the first is what looks like a new 911 Speedster, which makes sense since last time a Speedster made an appearance on the 911, it was the last 911 to debut before the all-new version, and you know, we are hearing the all-new 911 will be debuting at the Paris Motor Show in October, and so this makes sense timing-wise. This is the Speedster. But the thing that gets me really excited about this Speedster is, you know, if you look in the past Speedsters, they just basically were a GTS with a few changes. This time, it looks like basically just a convertible version of a GT3, which sounds amazing to me. I'm just getting giddy just imagining that. A GT3, 9,000 RPM redline, especially with a manual, would be amazing with the roof off, so you can hear that wailing engine even better. That would be amazing. So if that's what they're cooking up here, which it certainly looks like. I mean, the wheels, the brakes, everything is straight off of a GT3. So if that's what they're cooking up here, that'd be amazing. Now, if it's just a, you know, a slightly warmed over GTS, that'd be a bummer. But you know, they always have that like double bubble rear tonneau cover there to cover, you know, where the rear seats usually would be, and you give it that Speedster look. But anyway, yeah, if that thing actually turns out to have a GT3 motor, it's gonna probably be my new favorite Porsche. So that'll be pretty awesome. Also, Audi was spied this past week testing the 2020 SQ3, and so this is basically just going to probably get the S3's 2-liter turbo, same one as the Golf R, basically 310 horsepower, 295 pound-feet of torque. Are likely, could be different though, and you know, it looks a little more aggressive than the next-gen Q3 that we still haven't officially seen, but have also seen spy photos of. We also know an RS Q3 is coming. I think we've seen that spy testing as well in the past, and so anyway, interesting to see that. Speaking of RS models though, the TT RS was spied running around the Nürburgring wing with what looks like a mild refresh. You can see it's got some new bumpers there, and the rear wing is actually slightly different as well. So maybe some better aero going on with this all-new version, but we'll have to wait and see when that shows up. A Motograph forum member this past week spied the 2019 Kia Soul up close, and I think this is the Korean version, but it looks to have very similar headlights arrangements to the Hyundai Kona, which it's probably going to be sharing a platform with, similar obviously from the same company. And anyway, as far as the actual profile, it looks very much like all the other Souls in the past, very boxy. You have the vertical tail lights. Interestingly though, this car has a center exit exhaust, which could mean it's a sportier model. We've been hearing rumors of a faster Soul or something, some kind of Soul N would be cool, but it could just be they're trying to give a sportier look to all the regular Souls as well. But anyway, this could debut at the LA Auto Show at the end of the year. That would make sense timing wise, and it could also possibly have all-wheel drive because we saw one running around in the snow in the past. Also, the production version of the Lincoln Aviator was spied already. We literally just saw the concept in New York, a couple of weeks ago, and now we're already seeing, and it looks just like the concept. Looks just as big, and even appears to have almost identical wheels to the concept in New York. Obviously, they're just blacked out here on this test mule. But anyway, under the camo, you could imagine it has very similar styling to the concept once again, especially in the back there. The taillights, you can see through the camo, look very similar to the concept. Even in the front, though, the shape of the grille and the headlights, from what we can see through the camo, it's very easy to imagine that concept underneath. And Lincoln's been very good about translating concept to production with very, very little watering down, I guess. And so anyway, production version of that, it looks fairly far along even there for the prototype that's running around. So this could be as soon as the LA Auto Show at the end of this year, or it could be Detroit or New York next year. We'll have to wait and see. Anyway, interesting to see that. Mercedes was spied testing the GLE43 again, but this time we actually get a better look at it thanks to them finally installing production headlights and taillights on it and stripping away a little bit of the camo so we can see, it's going to have the Pan America grille and the more aggressive front bumpers like you get on all the AMG versions. It's most likely, since it's the GLE, it's probably going to get the E63's engine, the 4-liter twin-turbo V8, meaning the S version of this could have 603 horsepower and be absolutely awesome. So anyway, interesting to see that running around. And several BMWs were spied this past week. The first are some spy pictures actually sent to me by Joe, who spotted these three together in Atlanta, and so huge thanks to him for sending in these pictures. What it looks like is, it looks like the X4M, the X3M, and then the new X5. So the X5 looks similar to the others that we've seen spied in the past. That should be coming fairly soon. But this is, I think, the first time, I believe, that anyone's seen the new X3M or X4M, and so huge thanks again to Joe for catching this and sending it in. This is in Atlanta, and yeah, it's looks pretty cool, especially that X3M. It has the more aggressive bodywork there. I see the interesting, more aggressive roof spoiler as well, flared fenders, all that type of stuff. And yeah, so we knew all these versions were most likely coming, although we haven't seen a full-on X3M, I don't believe yet. So that'll be really cool, especially if they put the M3 motor in it. That would be awesome. Yeah, so anyway, huge thanks once again to Joe. Next here is BMW spied testing the X7 over in Europe. This time we actually get a look at the interior, which appears to actually be introducing a few new things into the BMW interior design, finally. BMW designs for the interiors are always very predictable and very similar, and this actually changes it up with things, for example, like a starter button you can see down by the shifter there, which is a new thing for BMW. You also see there's finally a different setup for the climate controls, with a little screen in between the two air vents, instead of always just having the traditional just one row and then another row for each individual thing. Yeah, so again, who knows, these have been spy testing forever, so anytime, throughout this year would be ripe for these to show up. The last BMW that was spy that, again, should be making a debut at some point, maybe Paris here in the fall, is the 8 Series Coupe and Convertible. And we get a glimpse of its interior as well, including an all-new gauge cluster that actually looks kind of similar to the gauge cluster there in the Supra that we just saw. We'll have to see. Again, it's so hard to see with these, pictures that's quickly taken through the window video of some guy driving. It's going to be tough to get too many details here. But the confusing thing about these prototypes is they seem to be wearing M brakes. You can see the blue calipers there, but the styling is that of regular non-M8 series. So unless they're really toning down the looks on the M8, but we've seen the M8 running around in camouflage before, and it looks way more aggressive. So I think this is the regular 8 series. I don't know if this is like a brake upgrade you can get for them, or if this is the M Sport version instead, or what. But anyway, interesting to see that. The last little bit of BMW news comes from Motor.es that's reporting supposedly BMW will make an i1 model that's going to be based on the Mini Cooper electric that's going to be showing up next year. And in the Mini, it has a single electric motor. It does 180 miles of range. Since it would be called the i1, it would supposedly just be a sedan or hatchback. Since BMW has copyrighted i1X all the way up to i9X or whatever. So it's, anywhere between is what, we could see as far as a crossover, but since this is only called an i1, it wouldn't be a crossover, thankfully. But anyway, we'll have to see if this news turns out to be true, but an interesting report nonetheless. Other electric stuff here is, according to Reuters, Tesla is supposedly planning to build or start production of the Model Y SUV that's going to be based on the Model 3. They're going to be starting to build these in November of 2019, but we all know with Tesla's timelines, they don't always stick to them, and they're still struggling to even get out Model 3s. So yeah, I wouldn't hold your breath for a release date around then. Maybe a year after that would be a safe bet. But anyway, interesting to see that. And lastly, Go Auto this week talked with Infinity's Vice President of Product Strategy, who revealed that Infinity will be adding Apple CarPlay and Android Auto functionality to their existing systems in their vehicles starting next year. Now, I don't know if that means like the current system is just going to have it for all 2019 model years, or if that means they're going to be able to retrofit it to current gen Infinities. I'm not sure, so we'll have to wait and see, but I'm glad they're finally adding it, because there's already aftermarket solutions, I believe, for Infinities to have Apple CarPlay. So for them to finally make it, official would be nice. They also said they plan to overhaul their whole infotainment system, which is great news. Except they said they're not overhauling it until 2021, which, especially in the tech world, is an eternity. So I mean, we're still going to be basically 4 years away before that Infinity infotainment system gets updated, and especially the top screen on those Infinities already looks outdated. So you got 4 more years of that languishing before we actually get a full new version. They said they're going to stick with the stacked 2-screen layout, which I think is a good layout, but they said it'll just be higher resolution, more responsive, and larger as well. But yeah, so good to hear that, but I mean, it's a long time to wait, and might put Infinity behind the pack as far as technology goes in the meantime. But anyway, that's it for all the news this week, guys. So thank you guys very much for watching. Let me know your thoughts about everything in the comments below, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.